This movie is the third installment of the paranormal horror movie franchise created by modern horror master James Wan in 2013. This is also the 8th entry into the so-called Conjuring universe. Based on the 1981 trial of Arne Cheyenne Johnson, who invoked demonic possession as a defense for killing another man, the film once again follows real-life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren as they set out to provide evidence to back up his claim. This third installment in the Conjuring franchise is the first not to be directed by James Wan. His absence is unfortunately palpably felt throughout the end product. This movie is the weakest of the three main films. This movie breaks from the haunted house tradition that defined its predecessors and blends its classic horror roots with an investigation narrative, broadening the story scope and weaving in a number of side plots. This decision unfortunately causes the film to lose much of its sense of claustrophobia and nerve-shedding tension, which was one of the foundational strengths of the earlier entries. The shift away from the haunted house formula of the first two Conjuring movies seems like a smart idea on paper, but after a shamelessly Exorcist-inspired pre-title sequence, the film settles into a frustratingly comfortable, even complacent mood, and never gets anywhere close to the modest peak of its opening set piece again. It doesn't carry the sense of dread of the first two Conjuring movies. Even the goriest scares can't quite match the horror of the first two films, failing as they do to creep under the skin. The scares are quite predictable and lacking some of the shock factor. The film is too committed to the jump scare, while James Wan's strength was always to let the camera linger and the audience fill in the dark blanks. This movie is preoccupied with contorting bodies and distorting perception. While some of these moments are decent, ultimately, there is no gut punch to the scares because we don't get to know any of the characters that are being affected by the supernatural forces. Unless it's the Warrens in danger, it's hard to care. The patience and ingenuity of James Wan's more memorable set pieces are nowhere to be found here. The delineated spook scenes proving too reliant on metronomically predictable jump scares and too often slipping into unintentional goofiness. We spend surprisingly little time with the accused murderer Arne throughout the film and gain little insight into his interior life. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are really good as the Warrens, but they're mostly left to their own devices to merely go through the script's formulaic motions. The story veers away from the haunted house trope and leans into detective territory and satanic cult worship to eye-rolling effect. This pivot only serves to bloat the script, perpetuate satanic panic misconceptions, and move away from the grounded quality that made the first two Conjuring movies so compelling. The movie also struggles to weave the realism of its procedural framework with its horror elements. The diverging storylines also mean the audience is allowed time to breathe away from the movie's horror elements, which then requires more work on the viewer's part to actively buy into the supernatural dimension of the case. This ensuing lack of cohesion and focus causes the story to stall in the second act, leading to an unconvincing and anticlimactic conclusion. Overall, we probably have to appreciate the desire to switch up the well-trod haunted house format, but unfortunately, it's largely been replaced with a generic round of paranormal breadcrumb following, tangling itself up in subplots and backstories, which reach a critical mass of tedium in the film's noisy but joyless third act. It feels rote and dispassionate, lacking even the basic memorable thrills of the instantly iconic mascot-type monsters introduced in the prior movies. James Wan's creative, character-driven craftsmanship is sorely missed in this threequel, which is the dullest and the silliest of the Conjuring trilogy.